Welcome back. This is Sandy with Sandy's Organized Chaos, and today we're going to be doing this beautiful gradient glittered tumbler. We're also going to be adding a little bit of distressing over top, which is a perfect base for anything you'd like to apply to its surface. As usual, I'll make sure to put everything I used today in the description box below so that way you guys can purchase those items if you would like to. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and let's wake up, prep these tumblers, and slay all day. Let's do this. Starting off with the tumbler that I'm using today, this is a 34-ounce Big Mama from Mother Tumbler. I went ahead and I prepped and I painted this tumbler already. I painted the bottom portion a coral, and I only painted about 2-3 inches of the top a magenta, just to match the color glitters that I'm going to be using today. So whatever colors you're going to be using as far as your glitter goes, you want to make sure that you kind of match the paint underneath. That just really helps out with anything that might look a little sparse. It'll kind of help that situation out. I'm just going over the glitters I'll be using today. That first one was called Party Peach. This one is called Peachy Punch. Then I will be using Glitterly Grape, followed up with Lavender Lush. And then the last one I'll be using is called Magic Key. And you can find all these glitters at socglitters.com if you would like to. To adhere the glitter down today, I'm going to be using the epoxy method because this is such a large tumbler and I want to have a little bit more work time with my glitter because I'm using so many different glitters. I'm just going to use the epoxy. So I have 10 milliliters of epoxy that I had stirred up, and I'm going to apply all 10 mLs down onto the base. And the reason why I'm using so much epoxy, which I mean, it really isn't, but it kind of is, depending, is because I'm using 2 chunky glitters, and I want to make sure that my chunky glitters are going to be able to lay nice and flat for me. So if you were just using all fine glitter, you want to use a bit less epoxy, probably more like 5 mLs, and you really want to just stretch it on to your tumbler base so that way your glitter doesn't get that slick look to it. But with the chunky glitters and everything we're going to be doing, this should be just perfect. So for all my brand new friends that are new to tumbler making, there's going to be so many different ways of doing this that you're going to see, and it really all boils down to what you feel the most comfortable with. So I hope you enjoy the way that I do it. I've always started on the bottom. This is just what I've done, and I'm going to just take that glitter and I'm just going to pinch it into my fingers, and I'm going to sprinkle it down onto the surface. So I want you guys to notice, because of the amount of epoxy that we used, it's already pretty much laying flat for me, and that's what you want. That's what you want to see. That's going to make it so much more easier for us when we go to epoxy and do all that stuff, along with making sure that our base is pretty much relatively close to the color glitter that you're going to be using. That is also helpful as well. But what I did was I went ahead and I doused the bottom with that glitter, and then I slowly brought it around to the edge so that way it could start draping down the sides. And I'm only going to bring it up so far. I just kind of keep in mind the amount of glitters that I am using. So I try to make sure that I leave about the same amount of space around, from top to bottom, so that way each glitter has about the same amount of space. And then when I go to move on to my second glitter, I will start it up into the glitter that I had done beforehand. I'm going to do a row. I'm just going to rotate it around in my hand. I'm just going to do a row of that glitter, and then I'm going to tip the bottom down. I'm going to let that gradually just fall onto that glitter, making that gradient, and tilt it up and doing the same thing, bringing it again just right around that center area that we started and letting it just naturally fall itself. And then just very, very gently making sure that I come up a bit so that way, again, it just continues that gradient. But I could sit here and tell you guys all day how to do it. It isn't until you actually start doing it yourself that you're going to find, again, a way that works best for you. So I hope that, watching me helps out a bit, because I know a lot of us are visual learners. So that's why I'm just trying to slow this down and really just kind of let you watch. So, and I'm just trying to give as many pointers as I can think of as I'm watching myself here. So So those last 2 colors were very similar. One, the chunky one has a little bit more pink to it. The fine has a little bit more coral to it, or orange to it. This next one is the center. So this is called Magic Key, and this is where it starts to get that champagne and purple into it. So it's going to be a little bit more visible as to the gradient or the ombre as you start to do it. So again, I'm going to go just make a line of it straight around the center. I'm going to tip the bottom down and let that just naturally fall on onto the glitter beforehand, and again, tip it up, letting that gradient happen in the opposite direction as I go. And because I'm working with a handle, I have to keep that in mind as well. So I have to make sure that I get a little bit of that handle too. So because I know I want to have a chunky at the top, I wanted a chunky at the bottom and chunky at the top, I'm actually going to move on to my chunky next. I'm going to take my Lavender Lush and I'm going to do completely around the rim of my cup. And the reason why I chose to do this is because I wanted that Lavender Lush to fall a bit further down than I typically would. I wanted it to come almost down to the center. And if I would have went ahead and moved on to the next glitter in line above the Magic Key, then it wouldn't drape as far as I wanted it to. So I want the next glitter that I use to be more of a filler versus it being more, just that glitter in the center, because I want this Lavender Lush to really have a dramatic look to it. So now I'm just going to make sure I'm just taking pinchfuls in my finger again of the chunky glitter. The reason why I do the pinchfuls, I don't know if I explained this earlier, was because I feel like I have more control over it, and I disperse the amount needed versus just dumping it on there. I feel like when you dump it on there, it's more prone to having the chunky kind of stand up and not lay flat, versus me doing it in this fashion where I can kind of disperse it evenly myself as I go, and it's already pretty much laying flat for me. So right here, I'm just making sure that I get that handle. I get the top of the handle. I'm going to get underneath that handle. This is where it gets a little tricky, especially when you're trying to do an ombre as when you're doing a handle. So again, just keep practicing. And I know you guys got this. I know you'll be able to do it for sure. Now, like I said, if you guys are new and you just want to practice, I believe the Stainless Depot company does offer a bundle where it's just practice tumblers, so that you don't have to use a good tumbler, So I'll make sure to put that into the description box for you guys. I'm pretty sure they still offer that. So that's a great option for those of you that are just learning, a great way to just kind of practice and make sure that you got it down without using a good tumbler, All right, so now everything's all glittered up. I got the handle done, and I'm going to go ahead and move on to my fine cut. This is called Glitterly Grape. Again, I'm just going to rotate it and make that line up into the purple I did before, and then I'm going to tip it back so that way it drapes onto the chunky, and then tilt it forward so it comes down into that Magic Key that we have already in the center there. Again, just creating that gradient or ombre for us. Now we don't want such a harsh line in between the purple and that champagne. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in the opposite direction. Now I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap with my Magic Key with that champagne. I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap in between my purple and that. And I'm going to come back through with my champagne color, and I'm going to come through and I'm going to do the same thing where I make that line once more. And then I'm going to make sure that I tip it a bit heavier, and so that way the champagne really drapes back onto the purple itself. And that's really going to that's when you're going to really start to see that gradient come into play. That's when everything really starts to come together, is when you do this second round of just coming through and doing pretty much the same exact thing you did on the first round, just in the opposite direction. So working with Magic Key, and then coming through once more with that Party Peach, letting it cascade up and down into the opposing colors next to it. And voila, we made a gradient. Look at us. See, I knew you could do it. Yours is absolutely beautiful. So now all I'm going to do is just take my opposite gloved hand. I'm going to remove any extra glitter from around the rim. I'm going to tap anything down that's poking up, and anything that seems like it just doesn't want to lay flat, I'm going to go ahead and just remove that completely. That'll really help us out when we go to epoxy for sure. So after this is cured, after the epoxy has cured, I'm going to come through and I'm going to take my chip brush. I'm going to sweep away really, really good. You want to sweep it really hard, get off any extra glitter, anything that's going to fall off, let it fall off. Then you're going to come through and you want to seal your glitter down. Now you can use a liquid sealer or you can use a spray sealer. I used a spray sealer for this one. It's called Rust-Oleum. I'll make sure to put it in the description box for you guys. It's just a clear sealer, and this is really going to help out and make sure that our glitter doesn't shift around on us when we go to epoxy, because we don't want that purple too far down, We want it to stay up at the top mainly, right? So that spray sealer is really going to help us out when we do that. So then I will go ahead and apply my coats of epoxy until it's nice and smooth, because when we go to do the distressing, we want to make sure we have a nice smooth surface, so that way that distressing moves around fluidly, which you'll see why here in a second. So I'm just going to do that whole process, and when I come back, I'm going to have a nice smooth tumbler and we're ready for that distressing. I'm outside. My tumbler is nice and smooth with my epoxy, and I have it on my stick so that way I can hold it when I'm spray painting. I also have a metallic gold. You can use bronze, gold, whatever you'd like. I also have isopropyl alcohol in a spray bottle, which is very important because we want to spray it onto our surface. So I'm going to take my rubbing alcohol. I'm going to go ahead and moisten up the surface of the tumbler. Then I'm going to come through with my gold. I want to move kind of quickly because that rubbing alcohol dries relatively fast. And I'm just going to randomly spritz around my metallic coloring. And as you can see, it's already running for me, and that's what we want. And I'm just going to tip that back and forth, and pretty much you just want to do this until that gold dries. Now, if you get some dry spots that you want to move around a little bit more, as you see in there, I just gave it a couple more spritzes of my rubbing alcohol to get it moving and more fluid for me. And then I'm just going to watch it and kind of just move it around until it starts to dry. And I realized that area was a little too dark, so I moved over into the sun, and I'm just doing the backside now. So again, I'm going to wet the surface with my rubbing alcohol, and then I'm going to take my metallic and just do some random spots here and there. And then I'm just going to have my rubbing alcohol on hand just in case I need to move it around, because there was a spot right by the handle that I needed to move around, and that's all you want to do is just keep it wet and moving around until you get it about the way you'd like. I really liked how this portion turned out. It looked more fluid to me, but it just really gives this kind of extra, I don't know, it just gives an extra distressing look to it that I thought was really pretty, and it just really reminded me of a sunset or a dusk, and which was the look I was going for anyway. So that's pretty much all you want to do with that. It's really simple. So you could add as much as you'd like, as little as you'd like, because there is no right or wrong when it comes to making art. So after you get done playing around with this and figuring out how much you want to add, you want to make sure that this dries completely. Then once it dries completely, I'm going to go ahead and give it a coat of epoxy over top of this portion, because the decals I want to use need a nice smooth surface to apply them. But super simple so far, right? I told you guys, I know you got this. Now, this could go in so many different directions. It definitely has that summer vibe to it, but I just wanted to do something a little bit different versus palm trees and all that kind of stuff. I found these decals off 311 Co., and they are just dandelions, but it still has that summer feel to it with the dandelions, but with the gradient background. So it just really kind of reminded me of like dusk, and you're running around as a kid and having fun, catching fireflies and making wishes on dandelions. So I thought that was cute, and that's why I chose this. So these decals, I'm just going to go ahead and cut out. You just want to cut as close as you can, because the decal themselves have a white backing, so you can put it on any color you'd like. It shows up really, really well, but the vinyl around it is clear, so that way you can just stick that down to the base itself. So you just want it as close as possible to kind of help out with the curving of the curves on the tumbler. There we go. So I'm pretty much just doing a row of these dandelions, and then I'm just going to completely cut them apart. I'm even going to use some of these ones that are kind of half on there too, to kind of do up around the top of the rim and the bottom as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and get these cut. Now for the Just Breathe, because that was the main decal, I was like, I wanted to do something different. I didn't want it to be up at the top like we typically do. I thought this was really cute, just kind of on the bottom, more off to the side, just a little hint of a quote there. I thought that was really cute. So these decals, again, are super simple to work with. You lay them down, and you're just going to burnish them down really, really well. If you happen to get a little air pocket in there, no need to worry. All you want to do is take a needle, or if you have a weeding tool with the little needle at the end, you just take that, poke it right down into the bubble, and then just press the air out, and there you go. Now here's one of those half ones I was telling you about. I'm going to go ahead and put one up around the rim. And now when you go to do this, you want to make sure, obviously it's pretty smooth. That's why we applied the epoxy, but you also don't want to come all the way up to the rim. You want to leave a little bit of a gap, just because we're going to be putting epoxy over top and stuff like that. You don't want it too close up to the rim is all I'm saying. So that's all you want to do. Again, burnish it down really well. And then as I place them down, I'm just going to make sure that I kind of evenly distribute them throughout, making sure they're not too close together, so that way it has a nice fluid look to it. And then I did decide to do the handle, and here I'm going to show you how I did the handle. So you're pretty much working with vinyl. So if you burnish it down, which is what I'm doing with my finger there, I'm just making sure I'm rubbing it really well, and it provides a little bit of heat, or you could use a heat gun. Just kind of, you want to be very quick because you don't want to melt it, but I just use the heat, the residual heat for my hand, and if you keep going at it, it will stretch, and you can manipulate it to curve around these handles, which is what I'm doing here. So like the stem here, I'm just going to take it, I'm going to gently pull it and press it with my finger. Again, just kind of manipulating it so that way it can wrap around these weird surfaces. So before I apply a coat of epoxy over top, I'm just going to give it a once over, making sure everything is stuck down really, really well. And then we'll be ready to move on to that next step. So I have my epoxy, and into my epoxy, I'm actually going to add a little bit of bronze foil. This is completely optional, but I just really like that extra layer of, dimension that it kind of gives to everything, that extra distressed look to it. So I'm going to add some bronze foil down into that epoxy, and a little bit of Suncatcher Silver. So this right here, I just wanted to add a little bit of this just to kind of give the illusion again of like fireflies kind of twinkling in the dust. So I'm going to go ahead and take just a little bit of that and put that down into the epoxy as well. And then I'm going to stir that up really, really good before I start to apply it. So when I get this onto my tumbler, you're going to see that that foil kind of wanted to chunk up. But that's okay. I just kind of took it and distributed it a little bit with my finger there, and then just continue to get this layered onto the surface. And of course, it's perfectly okay that once you get it onto the turner, you want to apply a little bit more of glitter here and there, go ahead and do it. It's completely up to you, because that's the great thing about art. It can look however you want it to look. So that's all I'm going to do here. Sprinkle on a little bit more glitter, a little bit more foil here and there. After this cures, I will get another 2-ish coats put onto this, I believe so. Yeah, it was 2 coats of epoxy I went ahead and put over top of what I did here, and then she is good to go. Whether you take this design and duplicate it as is, or you take it and let it inspire you to create something that is completely your own, I hope that you guys enjoyed this tutorial today. Again, if you're new to my channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time.